Funny how the word emergency makes hearts skip a beat, like suddenly time itself has teeth. You hear it, and your pulse jumps, your mind races, your hands itch to move faster than they ever have before. Someone says, "Open this now," and the panic sets in, because you start imagining what happens if you don't. That's the trick, isn't it? The pressure of urgency isn't always about the danger itself. It's about the fear of hesitation. People don't realize that most disasters aren't born from the storm, but from the seconds wasted waiting, doubting, second-guessing. When the order comes sharp and clear, it's not asking you. It's daring you to act before the window slams shut. Urgency exposes who can act without hesitation. Because when the signal comes, when the demand hits your ears, there is no time for long speeches or careful debates. The world doesn't pause to give you room to think it over. It slaps you awake, throws the choice in your face, and says, "Move or die." And most people, they crumble under that weight. They freeze, their thoughts spiral. They convince themselves that hesitation is wisdom. But hesitation is just another word for surrender. In those crucial seconds, it's not the clever one who wins, not the calm one, not the one with the perfect plan. It's the one who acts. The one who doesn't wait for permission from their fear. You can see it in the smallest things. A fire breaks out, smoke filling the room, alarms screaming. Half the people run toward the exit without a second thought. The others, they stand there blinking, trying to process, waiting for someone else to confirm what they already know. And by the time they move, it's too late. They're trapped in the flames of their own delay. Not because the fire was faster than them, but because their hesitation made it so. The danger wasn't the smoke. It was the seconds they wasted convincing themselves it wasn't real. The funny thing about urgency is that it reveals character like nothing else. You can pretend to be brave when everything is calm. You can wear the mask of confidence when the world is still. But the moment pressure hits, when an order cuts through the noise, the mask falls off. Suddenly, the truth shows itself in how fast your legs move, how quickly your hands reach out, how sharp your decisions cut through the fog. Some people collapse into chaos, others snap into focus. And you only know which one you are when urgency leaves you no room to fake it. What people don't understand is that hesitation feels safe, because it feels like control. They think, if I wait just one more second, I'll be smarter. I'll be better prepared. But that second isn't control. It's a chain. Every tick of hesitation wraps tighter around your neck until you can't breathe, can't move, can't escape. The storm doesn't wait for you to feel ready. The trap doesn't loosen just because you're scared. Reality doesn't pause while you make up your mind. Every heartbeat you spend waiting is stolen from the chance you could have taken. In moments of crisis, instinct takes the wheel. That's why urgency separates people. It doesn't give you time to wear your mask. It forces your real self into the light. You can't lie about your courage when the fire is at your back. You can't pretend you're strong when hesitation already swallowed your chance. That's why people fear urgency so much. It strips them down, exposes the truth of who they are. Not the image, not the role, not the performance, just raw instinct. And sometimes, that instinct isn't what they wanted to see. But urgency isn't cruel, it's honest. It says, here's the moment, here's the demand, here's the chance. Do you move or do you rot? There is no gray area. That's why the ones who can act without hesitation rise above the rest. They aren't always the most skilled, but they have something rarer. They've killed the habit of waiting. They trust their gut when others drown in doubt. They understand that in a crisis, the first move is better than no move. They know that hesitation is the slow poison, and urgency is the scalpel that cuts it out. Every emergency is a test, but not of strength or knowledge. It's a test of speed, a test of instinct, a test of whether you can silence the voices in your head long enough to act before the world swallows you whole. And every time that test comes, it writes your truth in bold letters for all to see. You either act and live, or hesitate and watch your chance die in front of you. Seconds wasted are the real killers, not the storm itself. People love to believe it's the size of the problem that destroys them, the strength of the enemy, the chaos of the moment. But it's never that. Storms are predictable, enemies are visible, chaos is loud enough to notice. What buries most people isn't the storm at all. It's the clock. That quiet, merciless ticking that eats away at the edges of their courage. They had a chance, they had a moment to act, but they burned it on doubt, hesitation, and fear disguised as caution. By the time they move, the opportunity is gone, and they blame fate instead of their wasted seconds. Think about how fragile time really is. A few heartbeats can mean the difference between slipping through the closing door or slamming against it. A pause in the wrong place can turn escape into entrapment. A single breath too long can separate survival from ruin. Seconds are not small. They are the knife's edge the world balances on. But most people treat them like loose change, tossing them around as if more will always come. They waste them convincing themselves the storm isn't real, or that they have more time than they actually do. And when reality proves them wrong, they finally understand that time was the real enemy, not the thunder outside. The storm doesn't kill you instantly. It gives you signs. The sky darkens, the air thickens, the warning comes. But what do people do? They stand there staring, bargaining with themselves. Maybe it'll pass. Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I'll wait just a little longer before I run. They whisper excuses to themselves, and every excuse burns another second. The storm isn't what takes them. It's the waiting. By the time they finally decide to act, the storm is already on top of them, ripping away the chance they thought would still be there. You see it in battles, in disasters, in betrayal, in life itself. The hesitation is always louder than the strike. People spend more time thinking about what they should do than actually doing it. They cling to the illusion that delay is strategy, when it's nothing but surrender in slow motion. They call it caution. Patience, wisdom, but deep down they know it's fear. They dress up their hesitation with pretty names, but the result is the same seconds burned, chances lost. Storms survived by others, but not by them. What's fascinating is how those wasted seconds feel harmless in the moment. A pause doesn't feel like death. A delay doesn't feel like failure. It feels like control. But it's the kind of control a rabbit has when it freezes in front of a wolf. Stillness isn't safety. It's suicide dressed up as caution. Seconds don't forgive. They don't wait for you to get your courage together. They don't pause out of pity. They pass, and once they're gone, they're never coming back. The strongest proof is how different people react to the same storm. One sees the darkness and runs immediately. The other stands frozen, calculating, waiting for confirmation. The storm itself didn't change. It was the seconds each one wasted that determined the outcome. The survivor wasn't stronger, wasn't braver, wasn't smarter. They were simply faster to act, quicker to cut through hesitation. The victim wasn't destroyed by the storm. They were destroyed by their own clock. The seconds they threw away, as if they had a pocketful of eternity. That's why urgency feels so cruel. It doesn't give you the luxury of wasting time. It holds up a mirror and says, show me who you are in these seconds. And most people can't handle that truth. They don't want to see that their own hesitation is the blade against their throat. They'd rather blame the storm, the enemy, the situation, anything but themselves. But the reality is, every second they let slip was another chance strangled. And when you finally count the bodies, after the chaos clears, you'll find most of them weren't killed by the storm at all. They were killed by the seconds they wasted pretending they had more time. Orders in crisis aren't suggestions. They're ultimatums. When the demand cuts through the noise, when the command lands heavy in your chest, you don't get to negotiate. You don't get to debate. You don't get to ask for more time. The moment is already on fire, and the order is the only rope hanging down into the pit. Grab it or don't, climb or fall. But understand that hesitation is not part of the deal. People like to think they always have a choice. That life is a buffet of endless options. But when the world turns sharp, when chaos crashes in, the order you're given is not a gentle request. It's the line between survival and collapse. It's funny how people react in those moments. Some treat the order like advice, as if they can bend it, delay it, reshape it to fit their comfort. They hear, "Move now," and they whisper back, "I'll move soon." They hear, "Open it," and they say, "I'll think about it." And by the time they finish their thinking, the door is shut. The bridge is gone. The opportunity evaporates. Orders in crisis aren't written in ink. They're written in fire. Delay burns them into ash before your eyes. That's what makes emergencies so dangerous. Not the chaos itself, but the illusion that you still have room to choose. You don't. The clock is already bleeding seconds. The ground is already cracking. The knife is already in motion. The command you hear is the only chance you get to rewrite the ending. People who survive aren't necessarily smarter or stronger. They're the ones who understand that the command is absolute. They don't waste their breath questioning it. They don't waste their mind bargaining with it. They obey the urgency of the moment because they know hesitation is a death sentence dressed as thoughtfulness. Orders in crisis also reveal who's addicted to control. Some people can't stand the idea of following something outside their own pace. They think, I'll do it when I'm ready. But readiness doesn't matter when the floor is crumbling under your feet. The order doesn't wait for your pride. It doesn't care about your comfort. It isn't polite. It demands. And if you refuse, you pay. That's the cruel reality. Crisis doesn't bend for ego. And yet ego is what kills more people than the crisis itself. Notice how quickly people crumble when they realize the order isn't optional. Panic sets in because their illusion of freedom shatters. They thought life was a stage where they controlled the script. Suddenly, someone else shouts, "Move," and they realize the script was never theirs. That's when they either adapt or they fall apart. And most fall apart, not because the command was impossible, but because they couldn't let go of their need to hesitate, their need to feel in control. But the rare few, the ones who rise in crisis, they don't see the order as an insult to their freedom. They see it as clarity. In the chaos, the noise, the smoke, when nothing makes sense, an ultimatum slices through like a blade. They don't argue with the blade. They grab it, they act, and they live. They don't need the luxury of options because they know options are illusions in moments like these. They only need the command and their ability to obey it instantly. What people forget is that an order in crisis is not a cage. It's a door. The trap has already closed. The fire has already started. The game is already rigged. The command isn't there to control you. It's there to give you the one way out. Ignore it, delay it, and you'll stay exactly where you are, buried, burned, broken. Take it, and maybe you live to see another moment. But don't confuse it for a choice, because by the time it reaches your ears, the choice has already been made. It's either obedience to the urgency or surrender to the collapse. Every trap has a rhythm, a design so subtle most people walk right into it while smiling, thinking they're safe, thinking they're clever, thinking they're the ones in control. That's the joke, isn't it? People believe they're the hunters, when in reality, they're the prey circling closer to the jaws without even noticing. And the most dangerous part of a trap isn't the teeth, isn't the snap, isn't the blood. It's the comfort before it, the calm air, the silence that makes you think everything is fine. That's when you're weakest, when you relax, when you put your guard down, when you stop questioning the floor under your feet or the hand offering you help. That's when it gets you. You see, traps aren't just built with steel and wire. They're built with psychology, with timing, with your own habits. The best trap doesn't have to chase you. It waits. It studies the way you move, the patterns you repeat, the blind spots you ignore. It knows what bait to use because you've been advertising your hunger all along. People give away everything. They can't help it. Their weaknesses leak through their words, their eyes, their desires. And someone who knows how to listen, how to watch, how to wait, can build the perfect snare without lifting a finger. You'll step right into it because it feels like home. That's the real trick. The trap feels like comfort until it's too late. The emergency doesn't happen when the trap is built. It happens when it finally snaps shut. By the time you hear the sound, the game is already over. And people scream, they thrash, they cry about how unfair it is, how cruel it is. But they never admit it was their own steps that brought them here. The trap didn't move. It didn't chase them. It simply existed, patient and silent, while they walked willingly into it. That's what makes it brilliant and horrifying. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many traps are already set around you? How many doors you've already walked through thinking they were safe? How many hands you've already shaken that were nothing but bait? People laugh at the idea of being paranoid. They mock suspicion. They celebrate trust. But trust is the first ingredient of every perfect trap. No one sets a snare for the suspicious, only for the blind. And blindness, my friend, is the most common disease. Everyone wants to see only what comforts them, never what warns them. They'd rather stare at the bait than notice the wires. And when the emergency comes, when the walls close in, they always look shocked. As if the signs weren't screaming all along. As if the silence before wasn't suspicious. As if the too good to be true wasn't already telling the whole story. People hear alarms only when it's too late. They don't realize the quiet was the real alarm. The quiet was the trap telling you it was ready, that the stage was set, that the game was waiting. But no one listens to silence. They only listen to noise. And noise always comes after the damage. Here's the sick part, though. Some people need the trap. They crave it. They're drawn to the bait not because they don't know better, but because they want to believe in it. They want to think that the sweet fruit hanging in front of them isn't poisoned, that the door opening for them isn't rigged, that the path ahead isn't lined with knives. They want the lie more than the truth, and so they feed themselves to the design. That's why traps will never stop working, because people will never stop lying to themselves. The real emergency isn't when the trap snaps shut. It's before. It's now. It's in the moments when you still have eyes to see, when you still have the ability to step back, when you still have time to notice the strings being pulled around you. But most don't. They laugh at warnings. They think they're too clever to fall for it. They think traps are for someone else, never them. And then when the teeth bite down, when the air gets thin, when the exit vanishes, they realize the truth. The trap was always there, waiting, whispering in silence, and they were the ones who walked straight into its arms. Fear has a sound. It's not the scream, not the shout, not the chaos after the blow. It's the pulse in your ears before it happens. That pounding inside your skull, the tightening in your chest, that's the real alarm, the one you pretend not to hear. People think danger announces itself with fireworks, with explosions, with blaring horns. No, no, the real danger is quiet. It seeps into the cracks. It lingers in the background. It whispers while you're busy laughing. And the only ones who survive are those who learn to listen to the noise inside them before the world outside erupts. Because fear doesn't lie. It may twist, it may exaggerate, but it doesn't lie. That pulse is your body telling you what your mind refuses to accept, that something is wrong. But here's the tragedy. People don't trust themselves. They'll feel the shiver, the dread, the weight pressing down on them. And they'll ignore it. They'll silence the voice inside because it's inconvenient, because it ruins the illusion of control, because it makes them uncomfortable to admit they might be walking straight into a pit. They would rather drown in denial than choke on truth. And that's why danger always has the upper hand, because it doesn't need to be faster, or stronger, or smarter. It only needs you to doubt yourself. That hesitation is the lever, the wedge, the space it needs to strike. When you're in a room and everyone is laughing, smiling, relaxed, and yet something inside you whispers, wrong. That's not paranoia, that's instinct. That's your blood telling you the air isn't clean, that the smiles are masks, that the calm is staged. But you tell yourself, don't be silly, and you play along, you stay, you wait. And you ignore the sound of your own heartbeat screaming that you should move. It's ironic, isn't it? The very thing designed to save you is the thing you bury. The body senses danger long before the brain does, but the brain insists it knows better. And that arrogance, that dismissal, is the reason the trap doesn't even have to chase you. You'll sit and wait for it, smiling, thinking you're safe. The ones who survive emergencies aren't the strongest. They're not the bravest either. They're the ones who learn to hear fear without shame, who treat it as a compass instead of a curse. They move when others stay frozen. They leave when others laugh. They act when others hesitate. And people mock them, call them overreactors, cowards, paranoid fools, until the walls cave in. And suddenly the fool is the only one still breathing. That's the delicious irony. The instinct mocked is the instinct that saves. But people would rather be admired than alive. They'd rather blend in than stand out, even if standing out is the only way to escape. And that's why fear wins. Not because it's stronger, but because people hand it power. They give it their silence. They give it their trust. They convince themselves to ignore it until it's too late. Imagine a world where every shiver, every pounding heart, every whisper of dread was treated like fire in the distance, an undeniable sign to move, to act, to prepare. But that world doesn't exist because people cling to comfort like children clinging to blankets. They'd rather suffocate than let go. Fear is not your enemy. It's the only thing honest enough to show its face before the disaster strikes. It doesn't dress up. It doesn't sugarcoat. It doesn't hide. It simply pounds in your veins, hoping you'll listen, begging you to wake up. But you won't. You'll dismiss it, mock it, bury it deep. And by the time you realize it was the only voice worth hearing, the silence will already have been broken, and the emergency will no longer be coming. It will be here. Patterns. They're everywhere, stitched into the floor beneath your feet, hidden in the way people smile, carved into the pauses between their words. Most never see them. They walk blind, convinced every moment is random. Every event is chaos, every betrayal a surprise. But nothing is random. Nothing. The web is already spun before you take your first step, and the threads tighten with every move you make. The irony is that the pattern is loud, screaming, flashing, repeating. And yet you ignore it because you're too distracted by the bait dangling in front of you. People think danger is unpredictable, but the truth is, it's predictable to the point of boredom. It follows the same rhythm every single time. The problem is, you don't listen long enough to hear the beat. Every so-called accident is built on repetition. Every betrayal has a rehearsal. Watch closely enough, and you'll see the same words used, the same actions played out. The same silence is filling the air just before the knife slides in. But people don't want to see it. They love the illusion of surprise. They cling to the thrill of pretending the storm came out of nowhere. It makes them feel innocent, makes them feel like victims of chance instead of architects of their own downfall. But the pattern was there all along, woven into the way they ignored the signs, the way they brushed off the tension in their gut, the way they told themselves stories to make the lie more comfortable. You want to know how a trap really works. It doesn't just wait. It teaches you the rhythm first. It lets you get comfortable with the sequence, lets you believe the routine is safe, harmless, reliable. Step, pause, bait silence. And then one day, the pattern changes ever so slightly. The pause stretches longer. The bait looks a little brighter. The silence feels heavier. That's your signal. That's the red flag waving in your face. But you don't stop. You never stop. You tell yourself it's fine. It's nothing. It's in your head. And so you walk right into the jaws that have been waiting for the moment you got too bored to notice the music. The ones who survive aren't magicians. They're not prophets. They're just better listeners. They hear the offbeat, the discord, the moment when the song no longer matches the steps. They don't laugh it off. They don't ignore it. They know that the smallest change in rhythm is never small. It's everything. It's the alarm bell before the fire burns down the room. But most people don't want to hear alarms. They want lullabies. They want to be soothed, rocked back into blindness, told that everything is fine while the floor gives way beneath them. They'd rather keep dancing to the pattern even after the music has twisted into something sharp and ugly. That's the beauty of patterns. Though they reveal more about people than the trap itself. You can study someone long enough and predict exactly when they'll fail. You'll know when they'll hesitate, when they'll reach, when they'll trust. Their habits betray them more than their words ever could. And in emergencies, habits kill faster than blades. The person who always hesitates will hesitate again. The one who always needs proof will wait too long for it. The one who always follows will walk off the cliff without a thought. The trap doesn't have to be clever when people are so perfectly predictable. And here's the twisted secret. Even when you tell them the pattern exists, even when you shout it in their face, they still won't see it. They'll nod. They'll agree. They'll pretend they're awake. But the next time the rhythm plays, they'll still fall in step. It's not that they can't break free. It's that they don't want to. Predictability feels safe, even when it's fatal. The pattern comforts them, like a noose dressed as a necklace, tightening with every breath, while they smile and call it security. The emergency isn't in the trap being set. It's in the blindness to the pattern leading up to it. If you can't see the rhythm, you're already caught, already chosen, already walking into the jaws. Because the trap doesn't need to hide. It just needs you to stay deaf to the music that's been playing all along. The air shifts when a trap is set. You can feel it before you see it. A silence that isn't natural, a tension that crawls across your skin like electricity. People pretend they don't notice, they laugh, they carry on. But deep down, they sense it too, that something has already been arranged against them. And then comes the update. The so-called emergency, not to warn you, but to remind you that you were already walking into it blind. The net is tight. The pieces are moving. And the only question left is whether you keep pretending nothing's wrong, or whether you start paying attention before the floor vanishes beneath your feet. The silence before the strike is never innocent. People walk through it like it's nothing, humming, smiling, pretending it's just another ordinary moment, but deep inside, there's always that tiny itch they can't explain. The air feels different, the light bends in strange ways, and the rhythm of things isn't quite right. That silence is heavy, too heavy, but most ignore it. Because to admit it means to face the fact that something is about to happen. They tell themselves it's just nerves, imagination, a passing thought. And so they relax right into the jaws of the very thing waiting for them. Every trap ever laid starts with silence. Not noise. Not chaos, silence. Because silence lulls the mind, it rocks you into a false sense of safety. It's the predator's greatest ally. The space between footsteps, the pause between words, the calm before the thunder. And it fools people every time. They mistake quiet for peace when in reality, quiet is the signal that something has stopped moving, that something is hiding, that something is waiting. The absence of sound isn't emptiness, it's the sound of control. Someone somewhere is holding their breath, waiting for you to take just one more step. The silence before the strike tells you more than words ever could. It's not the obvious warning. It's the unspoken one, the kind your bones feel before your brain does. That faint prickle in the back of your neck, that sudden hesitation in your chest, that's not paranoia. It's instinct. But instinct is something people drown under distractions. They turn up their music, scroll their screens, talk over their fear, just so they don't have to face what the silence is screaming at them. And in doing so, they walk willingly into the teeth of the trap. There's a reason the silence feels unnatural. Because it is. Life is never still. There are always sounds, movements, interruptions. When it suddenly stops, it's because something is being hidden. Think about it, the forest goes quiet right before the predator strikes. The crowd holds its breath right before something snaps. The world knows how to pause when danger is close. But people don't listen. They treat the pause like a break, when really it's the countdown. The ones who survive are the ones who pay attention to the silence. They're the ones who don't dismiss the feeling, who don't cover it up, who don't laugh it off. They notice the absence, they feel the shift, and they act before the strike lands. Because silence isn't innocent, it's information. It's the warning that someone else has already made their move, and now they're just waiting for you to make yours. Most never figure that out until it's too late, until the silence explodes into chaos. And by then, the trap has already closed around them. So the silence before the strike. It's the cruelest sound in the world, because it's not really silence at all. It's a message, a countdown, a truth too many ignore. It's never innocent. And the moment you believe it is, you've already stepped into the center of the trap. Traps are built on your distractions, not on your weakness, not on your strength, but on the moments when your mind wanders, when your attention slips, just enough for someone else to tighten the ropes around you. That's the beauty of it. Nobody needs to chain you down if they can simply keep you looking the other way. Distraction is the easiest bait because it doesn't feel like a trap at all. It feels like entertainment, like comfort, like escape. You think you're in control, but really, every second you waste is another piece of the cage being assembled around you. Distraction doesn't shout, it whispers. It pulls you toward the flashing light, the cheap thrill, the endless noise that keeps you from noticing the hands setting the snare. You think you're chasing pleasure, but you're being led by the nose into confinement. Every scroll, every laugh at nonsense, every delay in action isn't harmless. It's permission for the trap to grow stronger. Because no one builds a cage in front of your eyes. They build it while you're busy staring at something else. And that's why traps work. People never fall because they're too weak. They fall because they weren't paying attention. A hunter doesn't need to fight you if you're already chasing the bait. He doesn't need to push you if you're already walking yourself into the net. He only needs to make sure you don't notice what's really happening. And people are so desperate to escape their own thoughts that they'll do the work for him. They'll look away, they'll laugh, they'll shrug, while the ropes tighten just a little more with every distraction. Think about how easy it is to lead people astray. A simple story, a shiny promise, a false sense of security. People fall in love with the bait. They stare at it, argue about it, obsess over it, never realizing the bait was never the point. The bait exists to keep your eyes fixed away from the ground beneath you, away from the wires hidden in the dirt. You focus on the candy while the jaws of the trap are being armed right under your feet. That's the design. That's the art. The cruelest part, Distractions feel harmless. They feel small. One wasted moment here, one indulgence there. It doesn't seem like it matters. Until you realize the trap was never built in one strike. It's built brick by brick, second by second. Each distraction becoming a piece of the prison you'll eventually find yourself in. By the time you notice, the walls are already too high, the door already locked. And then you wonder how it happened, how you got here. When the truth is simple, you handed away your focus, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to protect you. The trap doesn't need force when it has your attention. That's why the smartest hunters don't chase their prey. They distract them. They let the prey wander, chasing shadows, until the path they thought was theirs is suddenly gone. People don't realize the price of distraction until it's already claimed everything. By then, they're trapped not because they were caught off guard, but because they were too busy staring at the wrong thing. The rope tightens, the net drops, and all they can think about is how they didn't see it coming. But the truth is, they weren't even looking. Pressure reveals who you really are. Not the smile you put on when life is easy. Not the calm tone you use when everything goes according to plan. No, pressure strips all that away and shows the raw, unfiltered version of you that you try so hard to hide. People love to pretend they're strong, composed, in control. But when the walls start closing in, when the air gets thinner, when the weight presses harder on their chest, that's when the mask begins to crack. And that's when the truth comes out. Most people don't even know themselves until they're cornered. They walk through life rehearsing roles, wearing masks, imitating strength they don't truly own. But pressure doesn't care about the script. It rips it from your hands and forces you to improvise. Suddenly, you see what you're really made of. The excuses disappear, the pretenses vanish, and what's left is the core of you. Raw, trembling, desperate, or maybe stronger than you ever thought possible. You see, the world doesn't test you with comfort. It tests you with weight, with fire, with storms. Diamonds are made under pressure, but so is dust. And you don't get to decide which one you'll be in the moment. It's decided by everything you've built inside, long before the pressure arrives. The ones who crumble, they weren't destroyed by the weight. They were already fragile. The ones who rise, they weren't given special power in the moment. They had it hidden, waiting to be awakened when the squeeze came. That's why pressure is feared. It exposes frauds. It unmasks pretenders. People hate being under pressure not because it's painful, but because it's revealing. It doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter. It doesn't bend to your image of yourself. It shows you exactly what you are in the coldest, clearest mirror possible. And if you don't like what you see, that's not the pressure's fault. That's yours. Notice how people panic under pressure. They make decisions they swore they'd never make. They break promises they thought were unbreakable. They reveal fears they denied ever having. Pressure is the sculptor, and their actions are the cracks forming in the stone. It's not about what they say they are. It's about what they do when the weight becomes unbearable. That's the truth they can't escape. But pressure isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's transformation. Sometimes it forges you into something sharper, stronger, unshakable. The pain of it, the suffocation of it, it reshapes you if you endure it. Think of every blade. It was once rough metal until fire and pressure made it deadly. Think of every great leader. They were once ordinary until the storms tested them and revealed their steel. Without pressure, there is no growth. Without struggle, there is no becoming. Still, most people run from it. They'd rather live soft, untouched lives, pretending comfort equals strength. They avoid the squeeze, the heat, the fight. But that choice doesn't save them. It weakens them. Because the moment life inevitably applies its pressure, they collapse with no foundation to stand on. They've trained themselves for comfort, not for resilience. And so they shatter the first time the weight is real. The irony is, pressure doesn't create weakness. It only exposes it. If you're hollow inside, the weight will crush you. If you've built substance, it will refine you. That's why the same storm that destroys one man builds another. The same fire that burns one into ashes transforms another into something unbreakable. Pressure doesn't discriminate. It simply tells the truth. When the squeeze comes, when the weight presses down, when the storm closes in, you won't have time to fake strength. You'll act, and your actions will show exactly who you are. That's the secret people can't accept under pressure. You can't pretend. You can only reveal. Every move you ignore tightens the net, but you tell yourself it's nothing, just noise in the background. A coincidence, a detail too small to matter. That's the first mistake. Nets aren't thrown all at once. They're woven thread by thread, strand by strand, each one so thin it feels harmless. A missed call here. A strange look there. A word that seemed off but you brushed aside. And yet each piece is part of something larger. Something that only becomes obvious when it's too late and the threads are already wrapped around your throat. People love to believe they can outsmart the trap once they finally notice it. But what they don't understand is that by the time it looks like a trap, it's already finished. That's the genius of it. You never see the danger when it's quiet, when it's subtle, when it's boring. You ignore the little moves, the small changes, because you're too distracted, too comfortable, too sure of yourself. And that's exactly when the net gets tighter. It's never the big moves that destroy you. It's the ones you didn't bother to notice. A whisper instead of a shout. A shadow instead of a storm. The moves that seem insignificant, they are the deadliest. Because they slip past your defenses without you even realizing you've lowered them. You laugh them off, you dismiss them, and then suddenly you're tangled in something you can't escape. That's when panic sets in, when your breath shortens, when your mind starts replaying every ignored moment, wishing you'd paid attention. Do you know why the ignored moves hurt the most? Because deep down, you did notice them. You felt that flicker of discomfort, that spark of doubt, but you silenced it. You convinced yourself it wasn't real, it wasn't important, it wasn't worth your time. That's the cruel part. The trap doesn't just capture you. It forces you to realize you helped build it by ignoring the signs. You tighten the net around yourself every time you chose to look away. People think danger always comes with flashing lights, alarms blaring, chaos roaring. But real danger, it comes quiet, almost polite. It doesn't need to rush. It just waits for you to underestimate it. That's the way the world works. The knife you see coming is rarely the one that cuts you. It's the one hidden in plain sight, the one you dismissed, the one you thought was too small to matter. Every ignored move adds weight. Every overlooked thread pulls tighter. And once the net begins to close, there's no bargaining with it, no undoing the strands. That's when you understand the trap wasn't built overnight. It was built in every second you weren't paying attention. That realization is the sharpest blade of all. Think about it. How many times have you brushed off the little things, convinced they couldn't possibly lead to anything bigger? And yet, here you are, suffocating in a web of your own negligence. The trap is never one grand moment. It's 1,000 tiny details, each one ignored until the pattern was complete. By the time you see it, the game is already over. That's why the net tightens with silence, not noise. It doesn't need to rush. It doesn't need to scare you into action. It just needs you to keep looking the other way, to keep pretending you're safe, to keep ignoring the whispers that would have saved you. And you will, because comfort is always more appealing than awareness, and ignorance always feels lighter than vigilance. Until it doesn't. Until the threads you ignored become chains, and the moves you laughed at become the prison you can't escape. Danger is loud to those who are listening, but most people walk through life deaf by choice. They hear what they want to hear, see what they want to see, and anything that doesn't fit their picture gets tossed aside like background noise. The footsteps behind them, just coincidence. The sudden silence in the room, nothing to worry about. The warning in someone's eyes, must be their imagination. They laugh it off, they shrug it away, and they keep moving forward as if the world doesn't whisper before it screams. But the truth is, danger always speaks first. It doesn't arrive unannounced. It hums in the air. It lingers in the corner of your vision. It creeps in through the cracks long before it bursts through the door. The problem is never that danger is silent. The problem is that people refuse to listen. They think they're too clever, too strong, too untouchable to be caught off guard. So they ignore the signals, and those signals become the lullaby that rocks them to sleep right before the nightmare begins. You ever notice how animals survive? They don't need maps, phones, or alarms. They survive because they pay attention to the shift in the wind, the sudden stillness in the forest, the faintest crack of a branch. They listen. And because they listen, they live. But humans, they've trained themselves to drown out the whispers. They'd rather scroll, gossip, laugh, and pretend nothing's wrong. They mistake ignorance for peace. And when danger finally raises its voice, They act shocked, as if it didn't spend hours, days, years, warning them it was coming. Danger isn't polite, but it is patient. It will wait, letting the warnings pile up around you, hoping you'll keep pretending not to notice. And most do. They hear the cough in their chest and ignore it until it becomes a disease. They see the shift in someone's eyes and dismiss it until the betrayal lands. They sense the unease in their gut and silence it until the knife is already pressed against their back. Danger whispers, and they cover their ears. And then, when it finally roars, they cry out, "How could this happen?" As if the universe owes them an explanation. But the ones who listen, the rare few, they aren't surprised when danger comes. They saw it forming long before the others did. They noticed the details, the subtle cracks in the mask, the chill in the air that didn't belong. They weren't distracted. They weren't blinded by their own arrogance. They didn't dismiss the whispers as nothing. They listened. And because they listened, they were ready. Not comfortable, not safe, but prepared. And that makes all the difference. Listening isn't about hearing noise. It's about catching the signals in the noise. It's about noticing the rhythm change, the tone shift, the silence where there should have been sound. It's about trusting that little voice inside your head, the one everyone tells you to ignore. That voice is the only thing standing between you and the trap, between survival and destruction. Ignore it long enough, and you'll swear the world betrayed you, when in reality, you betrayed yourself by refusing to hear what it was screaming all along. Danger has no obligation to save you. It offers clues, not rescues. It doesn't grab your hand and pull you to safety. It whispers and waits to see what you'll do with the information. Most people, blinded by pride or laziness, do nothing. They turn the volume down. They dismiss the signs. They laugh in the face of warnings. And when the disaster finally comes crashing down, they call it sudden. But nothing is sudden about danger. It was always speaking. You just weren't listening. Survival belongs to the one who sees the pattern first. Not the strongest, not the fastest, not even the smartest, but the one who notices the rhythm before the music swallows everyone else. Patterns are the skeleton of chaos. They hide in the noise, in the repetition of small details, in the cycle of behaviors people swear are random. But nothing is random. The same faces show up at the wrong times. The same words are whispered just before betrayal. The same mistakes repeat until they strangle you. And while most people stumble through life blind to it, someone who catches the pattern early, they own the game. The trap isn't in the obvious, it's in the repetition. A door left open again and again. A smile that never quite reaches the eyes. A phrase that comes back in different mouths, like echoes bouncing through the walls. These aren't accidents, they're clues. Threads weaving together to form the net you pretend isn't there. People miss it because they're distracted by the moment. They look at each event as separate, isolated, harmless. But patterns are only visible when you zoom out, when you connect the dots, when you realize those tiny harmless details aren't random at all. They're the rhythm of the storm about to hit. Survival isn't about strength, because strength can be broken. It isn't about speed, because speed makes you reckless. It's about awareness, the ability to catch the cycle before it repeats, to see the hidden design in what looks like chaos. The predator who studies the herd doesn't strike at random. It waits until it knows the rhythm of their movements, until it can predict exactly when they'll be weakest. That's the same way the world works. And those who don't see the pattern are always the first to fall. Think of betrayal. It's never sudden. There are signs. There are cracks. There are repeated gestures that feel wrong if you bother to notice them. But people don't. They laugh. They excuse, they wave it off as coincidence. Until the knife slides in. And then they scream about shock, about surprise, when really the betrayal was just the pattern completing itself in plain sight. If you don't see the sequence, you'll always call it bad luck. If you do, you'll realize it was inevitable. Patterns are dangerous because they're seductive. They make people feel safe. A routine, a cycle, a habit, it lulls you into believing life is predictable, manageable. But patterns also trap you, because while you think you're in control, someone else is watching, taking notes, learning how you move, how you breathe, how you react. They wait until you've repeated yourself enough times to be predictable, and then they strike. That's how survival flips. The watcher becomes the survivor, and the one stuck in the cycle becomes the prey. The cruel truth is that the pattern is always there. The difference is whether you notice it or not. Those who see it early can step outside of it, break it, rewrite it. They don't play along, they disrupt the rhythm. And that disruption keeps them alive, while everyone else dances themselves into ruin. The ones who survive aren't always the strongest. They're the ones who refuse to keep moving in the same circles while pretending they're free. Every trap, every downfall, every betrayal is written in patterns long before the end arrives. If you don't train yourself to see them, you'll keep calling it fate, bad timing, bad luck. But if you do, you'll understand that nothing was sudden, nothing was accidental. You were told the ending over and over again. It was just hidden in the repetition you were too blind to acknowledge. Survival doesn't belong to those who wait for the net to fall. It belongs to the ones who saw it being woven and moved before it was ever finished.